Academic Ari Katz joins us now for some insights on this, the results of the IEB matriculants. A very good evening. Thanks so much for joining us once again, Mr. Katz. So looking at this pass rate of 98.4% this year, it's close to as 100% as you could get. And I'm just wondering, what accounts for this high and consistent pass rate with the IEB?
So good evening. I think what's important, just to put it into perspective, is to also understand that the number of candidates that write for the IEB, whilst it's extremely amazing, their results, and they're really outstanding, there are only 13,525 candidates approximately who wrote IEB, compared to a total of 755,000 total candidates who are writing matric this year. So it's a fairly small percentage of the total. And so I think we need to wait to see the total before we get overexcited about the results. However, your question in terms of what drives it, I think what's important to understand as well, that being a private assessment body, it's also an independent assessment body. I think it's obviously more expensive to write those exams, and hence it represents a higher LSM or demographic of student that's writing it, who typically would have access to probably better resources in terms of teaching and learning, internet, etc. And that's clearly got to be one of the factors that drives it, as well as the fact that I think the IEB does a great job of maintaining great contact with their schools and training of teachers, and the communication is great between the IEB and the teaching community.
You say we have to wait until we see the total. What total are you speaking of? Because I see here that 89.32% of these matriculants actually achieved a bachelor's pass.
I'm talking about in terms of the total number of matriculants who wrote in South Africa, not just the IEB candidates, but the total number of candidates, so that we get a broader view of all the candidates in South Africa.
But this, it's a very good average, close to 90% in the IEB receiving a bachelor's matric pass rate. Just in terms of whether these actually end up in universities, what is your calculation?
Obviously don't have exact numbers. However, I would estimate that a significant number of these candidates who achieved a bachelor's pass rate will in fact land up going to study at higher educational institutions, whether they be private or public, given both the number of candidates that achieved bachelor's pass or diploma or higher certificate. And in fact, all the IEB learners achieved either bachelor's, diploma or higher certificate. And so on the one hand, they achieve that. On the other hand, they have the right, many of them have the right economic demographic to actually be able to enter higher education.
And just looking at this cohort, the 2022 class missed out the most in terms of grade 10 and 11 due to COVID-19 pandemic. The extra pressure on them, do you think that that's also the result of these figures that we're seeing? Were pupils or learners, teachers forced to knuckle down even harder?
So yes, you're quite right. I think this group of learners were the learners who were in grade 10 when COVID hit, and obviously that's a foundation year for matric, and so they were hit by that and definitely suffered from the pandemic in terms of potential gaps in their knowledge. However, you also have to bear in mind that they were also able to learn from the learners who matriculated in 2020 and 2021 from how to cope with the pandemic and alternative mechanisms of teaching and learning. And we also, one of the things that has happened to us as a result of COVID is the extent of online facilities and online teaching and learning has obviously improved significantly over the last 2 years. So if you think about it, in 2020 when COVID hit, online learning was really all about access to Zoom and Teams. Whereas 2 years down the track, the online learning community has expanded significantly, way beyond just merely Zoom and Teams, to online libraries, to different modalities of learning, to audio, text, video, questions, answers, etc., all available on the net. And obviously, all of those have contributed, and congratulations to the learners who have obviously taken advantage of all these facilities that are now popping up on the net.
Pivot was a word that we heard a lot during this period, and I'm wondering how much of that was evident in terms of pedagogical approach. Was there a disruption in this space that will be long-lasting?
There's no question about it that the world post-COVID has changed forever. And in the teaching and learning space, that is no different. There's no question that teaching and learning is vastly different today from what it was pre-COVID or pre-pandemic. Teachers have access to extensive resources which are available online. Learners have access to extensive resources and have the ability to do research and choose different modes of learning which are available online, whether it be visual, audio, text, etc., and also have access to assistance in the form of online tutoring, online mentoring. And so, without a doubt, as you've mentioned, the pedagogy, the teaching and learning framework has definitely changed post-COVID.
And just finally, what are the material differences between IEB schools and DBE schools, apart from, as you mentioned, the numbers?
So the IEB, as you know, is an independent assessment body. It uses the South African national curriculum, which is regulated by the Department of Education. And the IEB is also quality assured by Umalusi, which is the Council for Quality Assurance in the general and further education sector. The GD schools are also regulated by Umalusi, and they also focus on the South African curriculum. So both bodies really focus on the South African curriculum, and both bodies are actually quality assured by Umalusi, both of which lands up with a matric certificate with endorsements, either bachelor, diploma, or higher certificate, or a simple NSC. So to that extent, in terms of what the candidate actually walks out with, in terms of his certificate, they both of them are walking out with certificates that are quality assured by Umalusi.
Thank you so much for your time, Ari Katz, who's an academic. We're going to leave it here for now. Do stay with us here, though, on SABC News.